Hi and welcome back. Today I'm going to be revisiting a video that I did in April of 2021 because a lot of things have changed since that video and I still get a lot of comments and questions asking how to do properties and then templates in Logseq. And the implementation is now a lot simpler, which is great, and I figured it would be good just to make a video on that. Now, I said I wasn't going to make any more tutorial type videos because that is all covered in Logseq Mastery. So if you do enjoy this sort of video, rather go have a look at Logseq Mastery. It's a much more structured approach to how you can use Logseq, both from a features perspective and then looking at how you can build your own workflows and systems. But nonetheless, I figured that because I get so many questions about this, I would just make a video on it. Another encouragement behind making this video is because this is the tweet that I've received the most interaction on in my history on Twitter, which is saying, I believe that page properties are going to become an ever increasing part of Logseq workflows and systems in the future, possibly more so than block properties. And adding properties to pages adds resolution to links by specifying the nature of the relationship. So we're going to look at exactly what properties are before we can even think about page properties. And this is more pertinent to those who would have come across Tana, because Tana has really taken an implementation of metadata to the next level. But we're jumping ahead of ourselves, so let's get into Logseq and have a look at properties. Great, and what I'm going to do in this video, first say what are properties. I'm going to illustrate properties by using a table. I'm then going to look at what block properties and page properties do, see if you may be doing it wrong, talk a little bit about how properties improve your links, and then look at some useful page properties to know about before going into closing thoughts. And then I'm going to look at templates. Okay, so that's just a quick breakdown here. And let me show my face again. Okay, so what are properties? Let's jump in there. Properties are a feature that allow you to add metadata into the information in your database. Now, if you're familiar with databases, you would typically think of that as fields if you had a relational database. And for those of you who are familiar with Rome, it's the same as having attributes in Rome. And for Tana, it's the same as having fields in Tana. Now, as I said, it's jumping a little bit ahead of the gun, but Tana's fields are a lot more complex than properties and attributes, but nonetheless, it's helpful to just think of those things as analogous. Okay, so illustrating properties by using a table. Before I get into properties, I just want to say that properties in Logseq use a semantic triple format. And now I know that's a big word, it sounds complex, but it's actually quite simple. And it takes the format subject, predicate, object. And that's important because it adds another level of definition to your links. So I'm going to show this in a spreadsheet example, but it's important to say that the subject of the page or the block is the content of that block itself. And then you are defining a property, which is saying this is how it relates to this thing, and then you are entering a value which says how those two things are related. Okay, so that sounds a little bit complex. Let's have a quick look at a spreadsheet. Okay, so say now I have a couple of friends, and let's say my first friend is John. So I'll have a page for John, and I want to then say John lives in Australia. Okay, so what do? I add a field or a column, and I say John lives in, and then I would say the value for that property or field is Australia. Okay. So this over here is the subject, John. This is the predicate, which is the property that you define. And then Australia is the value. So it's subject, predicate, object. Okay, so you don't have to remember that. It's just helpful to know how it looks in a table. And then theoretically, I want to add more information about John. I want to say what his birthday is. John's birthday. That's another property that I'm defining, which is another field in my database. And then I can say his birthday is the 18th of July, 1989. Okay, so these are now my properties that I'm defining over here. Now we've added John there. Let's hypothetically add another friend to my database. So I would create a new page. Let's say Kerry. And Kerry lives in England. And her birthday is on 28th of March 1992. Okay, so these are now the different values of the properties. So Kerry would be the subject, the predicate is lives in, and then England is the value. Okay, but that you don't have to remember the subject, predicate, object. It's just helpful to know the terminology. Okay, so now I want to go and look at how I do this in my database. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to navigate to my page John in my database. So Control K, I'm going to say, there we go, there's John, and let's go to my John page. Let's close these link references. And I'm now going to enter in the very first block of a page. I'm going to say John lives in Australia. So the way that I do that is I can say lives and then dash in, because your properties have to be one word, and then colon colon. So that then creates a property, and I'm going to say Australia. Okay, enter. Now you can see there it automatically enters a soft line break when I have a property. I'm going to get back to that later. And there we go. I now have this property which says that John lives in Australia. So now I've got the page there for John. I now want to add the page for Kerry. So let me say Control K and then say Kerry, and then new page there, Kerry, before any search comes up. And I can use the same property by saying lives in, or I can just search my properties by starting with colon colon. So then I can search for matched properties. So I can start saying lives in, and that property comes up. And I can also choose from existing property values. But now Kerry doesn't live in England. She lives, in Australia. She lives in England. So there we go, England. Okay, cool. So that shows me another way of creating a property. So let's think back to Kerry's birthday. It's 28th of March 1992. So if I go back into this block and I enter there, I can say colon colon, and I can then start entering a new property. Now I already have the property birthday, so let's make it maybe wedding day so that I know that there's a new property here. So there we go. I'm now creating a new property. So I don't have to type the word in first. I can just do it by saying colon colon. Okay, so there we go, wedding day. And let's say Kerry married John and their wedding day was yesterday. Let me just say 23rd of Feb 23rd, 2023. Okay, so let's go back to John here and close these links. And then I'm going to say enter, soft line break over there. So shift enter is typically required, but when it's properties, it automatically has a soft line break first. And then I'm going to say colon colon, and then I'm going to say wedding day. There we go. And I've got a match property value which I can select from there. Now you'll see it doesn't automatically link that, which can be a bit annoying. I like to have my properties linked. So if I go there, I'll link that, and I'll also do that for my other values in my properties, because that means that I have linked everything in my text files as well, so that it's more usable in other applications. Okay, but now we're getting into the weeds. So there, let's make a new page Australia, and now we can go forward to Kerry, and then I'm also going to select that there. So there we go, square brackets. I'm just selecting it and then putting square brackets around the word. And that's how I create those links. Okay, so that's page properties done. And the important thing to note here is that page properties are the first block in the page. So this page, I could then start adding more information about Kerry here. So I could say, Kerry is a lovely person. But that's a separate block. So the properties, you'll identify the properties by having a different color block here depending on your theme. But that is, yeah, this grayed out block is the standard for your properties if you're on the white theme. And that just shows you that there is metadata entered for this page. Now, we can also add block properties. And this is something which I have implemented at length in my own database, because it's much simpler to add metadata than for me to neater to add metadata than to add all these tags in my database. So I've already spoken about how properties or page properties have to be the very first block on a page. Otherwise, those properties are entered into a block. Now, block properties are when you add properties to an individual block. So I could theoretically add a property to this block. So I'm going to say type. So what I do there is I say shift enter, and that enters a soft line break to show that I'm staying in the same block. And then I could enter a property type, and I could say colon colon, and this is a block. Okay, I'm not going to select that. And you'll now see that this grayed out part over here, this metadata belongs to this block over here. And I could say enter again, and because it's already got a property there, it automatically does a soft line break. And then I could say date created, or let me just say colon colon and then say date created. Okay, I don't have another one there, so let me say date created, and I can create a new date there, and then I can say today. So today is the 24th or Feb 24th 2023. Okay, so now I have these two properties for this single block over here, and I'll show how this looks like in a table just now. And an important thing to note is that one block can have multiple properties, and that means that you can add lots of different pieces of information in the same way that you'd be adding links to this block. So another way, if I just copy this block over here and I say enter to exit those block properties, and I say paste there. If I didn't have block properties, I could simply add this information here. So this is, let's say, add the link there. This is a block, and then this is the date created. Okay, sorry, no. And this is today. Let me just say /today, so that will work. Okay, but now you can see I've got this extra information, but it's not making much sense. And that's an important part of block properties, which I'll get to, or properties, which I'll get to in the summary of this video. Okay, so block properties can be entered into a single block, and that enables you to find your blocks based on individual metadata. Okay, let's go back to properties, and let's look at how you may be doing it wrong. Okay, so what good block properties look like is what I showed there. It's a block header with and this is some metadata that I used to use. I don't actually use these much anymore, but I will say, let me put that in links as well. And there we go. So these are some of the block properties that I've defined. Who is the producer? What is this type of thing? And what is the link? Okay, cool. So this is my block header. And then in that same block, I've got producer, type, and link. And if I expand that, all the information that is related to this block is nested underneath that block. So it's not sitting here, because then I won't be able to find this information later on. So that's an important point. A really important point is this indentation. This must be indented underneath there in order to be able to find it. Okay, so a bad example is when I have, this is my block header, and then I have lots of different lines of these properties. Now, if you use Rome in the early days, I don't know how it is now, but it might have changed, but this is what your attributes would look like. If this is how your properties look in Logseq, you're doing it wrong. It's not going to work for you. And you'll see here that this information, all the information that you might ever need, if I look at this line of inheritance, it doesn't belong to this block over here. It belongs to this block. So what this indicates is that all these properties are in different blocks, whereas what you want is all your properties to be in one block over there. Okay, so it's a super important thing to know, and this is what really transformed my use of Logseq in the beginning, because then suddenly I was like, oh, I don't have to create pages for everything. I can just use blocks and add the metadata to the individual blocks. Okay, so how do properties improve your links? As I said, properties add more meaning to your link relationships. So in that previous example where I said, this is related to block and this is related to today's date, it's like, okay, cool, how is that related? And properties allow you to define how those things are related. And when you use bidirectional links, like, it's only saying this is linked. It's not saying how they are linked. Okay, so this is what I've just said before. Properties add specificity to that relationship. They also give you powerful query abilities down the line. And I'll show that now when I get back to the example of the block properties in a table. And another really important part here, and you close this up here, is that, you just zoom in there, so Alt-Right, including properties in your templates forces you to input data or input metadata into your database so that you'll actually find that information later on. I found that if I didn't have these templates, I was quite lazy and I was like, I'll get back to it. And I never did. And then I always had to go back and find the information. But now with properties, I'm consistently putting in the data that enables me to get, or the information that enables me to find that information when I need it again. Okay. Before we look at useful page properties, let's go look at what I mean by both the useful or the ability to have powerful queries and what it looks like in a table. Okay, so if I go to my query for articles, this is a page that I've created and I've got a saved query over here, and these are all the articles that I've inputted into my database. Okay, so you can see here all the blocks, which is the article headline, the producer, and the link. Now, I don't need to get into that. That's some like old stuff that's over there. And let's go and look what this block looks like over here. So I'm going to say Shift and click to open it up in the right sidebar. And you can see here that my article, let me just make that a bit bigger over there. Firstly, I've got 281 articles in my database. Now, I don't want to have 281 additional pages, so I'd rather input information in blocks. And this was, as I said, one of the big revelations. So here's the article title, and I used these 3 pound signs to make it markdown heading level 3. And then I say it's input articles, the producer is School of Life, and here is the link. Okay, cool. So this is now on a block basis. So I showed on the page basis how that works. And the page, this would be the page, and then I've got some properties over here for the page. But the block, I can just say Shift Enter and then enter this metadata. And what I'm effectively getting here in my block example is I'm saying this is the how not to let work explode your life. So that's the block title, or the block contents really. It doesn't have to be the title. You could have a whole long block and add properties for it. And it is the type input, or instead of using type, I say input and output, because I output articles, so I've got an output article and an input article properties. So I say input articles, there's a fire somewhere, and then I say the link, and then I add the link, and that's basically building a thorough, consistent input of metadata into my database on the block level. So super useful and really powers easy retrieval later down the line. I feel like I'm maybe not landing why I like this so much. If I go to this November 29th page and the content over here, I'm going to click over that, and let me just close the right sidebar, and let me TO, so collapse everything, and then open this up. And you can see here that I've got all of these articles in the single page over here. So it's in my journal page. Whereas a typical, or in other programs, what you would do is you'd have pages for each of these articles. And even the Readwise exports, which is why I don't use the reader integration, sorry, not Readwise, I use Omnivore, it outputs everything as pages, whereas really, I don't want to have pages clustering up my database. I just want it in blocks, and I can easily find this information later down the line. So this is a huge win for me, and it really revolutionized the way that I use Logseq. Okay, so some useful page properties to know about. If I alt right in there, these properties over here are really useful to know about. So tags is just an inbuilt property that will show you all the pages that are tagged with a thing in a separate little line, and I'll show that later in the video when I get to a demo. And then icon, if I say TL on the left here, and it's say I have a what can I show? A task dashboard over here. You can see there that I have an icon page property which shows up in my left sidebar then when I add that to favorites. Another one is alias. So aliases are really great, TR, for pointing information to the same thing. So if this is supposed to mean this, or like hypothetically, I want to get 2 things to mean the same thing, I can use an alias. Okay, so I've just gone and found a useful example of an alias. So I've got this page, decision dash making, but at times in the past, I used decision space making. So I've simply got here an alias defined with decision making with a space, so that all of it points to the same page over here. And this filters over here is just if I use this filter here, it's a built-in Logseq property. So hypothetically, let's say Hanlon's razor, and there we go. So now I will get this filters Hanlon's razor equals true. So you don't have to worry about that. So this is also a helpful page show about that tag property, because I've tagged a couple of pages with decision making. So it now shows it in a nice collapsed menu over here. And if I navigate there to this thing here, you can see that I've used this tags property with decision making. Okay, so covered a lot of ground. Let's go back to this page here and then just say some closing thoughts. Okay, so as I said in that tweet a year ago, I think that properties are going to become an ever increasing or important part of workflows in Logseq. And this is particularly because of the development of Tana. You don't have to know about Tana. It's just another great program which has taken structured data to another level. I quite like the unstructured approach, although I am looking at Tana for future reference. And yeah, but Logseq has got some catching up to do in that properties department, but they are working on improved properties and also a query builder to make use of their properties, which are quite powerful if you know how to use them. Okay, so that's the half on properties. Let's get to the half on templates. And what are templates? Okay, so simply templates are pre-designed arrangements of blocks that can be used as starting points in your database for entering information. So why do you use templates? So templates build consistency in your database and they help you to reduce the friction of input. So if I just go down here, you can access your template with a few easy keystrokes rather than having to enter the same information back over and over again. So if I have an article that I read, I don't want to have to go, this is the article header, this is, and then shift enter, it's an input property, and then it's articles, and then the link, and then this is the link. Okay, this is super laborious. I'm like putting my hair out as I do it. It's a big time saver in Logseq using templates, and I'll get to some examples now. So yeah, templates save time and effort. There's some small upfront burden of setting up templates and setting up templates that work, but really it's negligible in the grand scheme of things. So I'd highly recommend that you learn how to use templates. And I've spoken about this before, that I don't actually use the templates so much as like I use a key expander, but the templates feature is really good and it's available for you in the drop of a hat. Okay, so some template basics. You create a template by selecting the block or the set of blocks, and then right-clicking that over there, and then saying make a template. So make a template, and then you can say what's the template name, this, or example template. Let's see, cool, and then there we go. So I've got this template here, which is example template, and then to use the template, I can use the / key, so / and then scroll to templates over there, or I can just start typing template, and then I'll say enter, and now which is the one that I want to use? I want to use my example template, and there we go. It enters that block over there. Now obviously this is just a single block, but you have a lot of other templates, or you can create a whole bunch of blocks in a single template, and I'll get to the example now. This is just my own tip over here. It's helpful to store the templates in a templates page to make it easier to edit your templates later down the line. Okay, so this template over here currently lives in this how to use properties and templates in Logseq page. And I found it difficult in the beginning at least to think, where did I actually store this information? I can always query it, so I can go here and say query where property is template, and boom, I've got all these templates in my database. But that's quite laborious. So what I do is I just make sure to have like a disciplined approach, and I'm going to say Control K and then templates, and then I'm going to say Shift Enter, and you can see here all the templates that I have in my database. Now you'll see that when I had that option over here to say / make template, I have the option to include the parent block in the template name. So this one over here, this daily template, I've decided to not include that template in the daily name because I've added that to my config file in Logseq, in my EDN file, so that comes up every single day. And the way to do that is to just go up here, right click, this is bonus information, settings, and then edit config EDN. And then if I just go here and I say, there we go, default template, on my daily journals page or my journals page, this is the default template that I want to use. So it's daily template. Okay, cool. So that's how you standardize a daily template from a template that you've built. Great. So let's go back here. And now it's very easy for me to go and edit this template over here. So hypothetically, I wanted to say, this is something new. And then if I go here and I say / template, and then this is daily template, boom. Okay, there we go. There's my daily template, but I'm going to undo that. Let me just say Control Z, and there we go. So very nice to bring in a structured set of blocks that you're going to use again and again. So what makes for a good template? These are just some helpful heuristics. If it's something that you're going to use all the time, I would definitely suggest making a template, like so long as it justifies the effort. And there's this funny XKCD, or however you say that thing, which says how long can you work on making a routine task more efficient before you're spending more time than you save. So for those who have worked in programming or have tried to automate a very simple task, sometimes it's just not worth automating a task, but oftentimes, specifically in Logseq, I've found it to be useful to me to use templates. Okay, another thing is, do you need a forcing mechanism to help you link your blocks? So this is what I said earlier, templates really make you stop and think, and well, templates plus properties at least make me stop and think and make sure that I'm adding some metadata so that I can find the information at a later stage. Okay, and then also, do you want to bring up prompts to encourage thinking? So if you've got like a journal or something like that, it's very helpful to use templates over there. So templates are a very useful feature in Logseq. I use them all the time, and yeah, highly recommend practicing your hand at templates. Okay, let's look at some examples of templates over here. So meeting notes, articles, and a standard daily note template. Okay, so I've already shown that standard daily note template, and that's this one over here. And there's actually another one over here which is quite useful, which is a review. So what stood out, what gave me energy, what kept me busy. So every week / month / whenever I remember, I try and do a little bit of a review, and these same prompts come up, and it's nice just to have them there, and I can adjust this as I adjust my thinking on how I want to do reviews. Okay, so that one we've done. Let's add a meeting notes template. So I'm going to say / template, and then I'm going to say meeting notes, and boom, there we go. I've defined this property, which is event, and this event is a meeting. And then I can say here, I've got a property for project, and I can enter the project. And then I've got all these predetermined bullets where I can say, or the blocks, who are the attendees, what are the objectives, what is the discussion, what's the next step. Very nice to just simplify my inputs, and then I can just give this meeting a title. So meeting with whoever, meeting with whoever. Okay, and then articles is one that I use a lot. It's standardized from my omnivore import, but that's neither here nor there. So I'm going to say / template, and I'm going to say article. Cool. So that's my standard article template. Now, for those of you who know how to use text expanders, I've got this shortcut set up, which is JJIA, so I don't even have to go and say / template, scroll, articles, just a time-saving thing over time. Okay, so I've covered a lot in this video. It's probably a lot to go through and maybe not a helpful reference. So this is why I'm also just using this as an opportunity to point you towards Logseq Mastery Tutorials, which is a much more structured breakdown of all of these things, and probably a little bit more digestible because it's shorter videos, and each of the videos have all the text accompanying them so that you can use it as a reference later on. I've also started building a resource which will allow you to go and find the information that you're looking for in Logseq Mastery Tutorials. Okay, so what does that look like? Let me go here. I'm going to say www.logseqmasteryupdates, And that's going to redirect you to a page, which is something that I've been working on for a while. If you are already someone who uses the course, I may have mentioned this in an email, but I'm not 100% there yet. Anyways, it will be live very soon. Well, it is actually live, but it's not 100% ready just yet. But it's a guide for how you can use Logseq Mastery. So for instance, you want to search properties. Let me say, this is a Logseq interface with all the navigation information for Logseq Mastery. So if I say Control K, let's search properties, and then I say properties over here, and then these are all the pages that are tagged with properties. So you can see here lots of different lessons that are linked to it, and then I could also just navigate to the individual lesson over here. So there we go. It's in Logseq Mastery with all the text, and it's much more structured and accessible for reference with some diagrams. So that's what I've been working on. This is also what I wanted to show while I was going to use this example for the tagged with properties, which just helps you find your information later down the line. Okay, I feel like that was a doozy of a video. I hope it was useful for you. I feel like I want to emphasize the importance of using block properties and how that changed the way that I worked in Logseq. It was really a revelation. Maybe it didn't land so well for you, but nonetheless, hopefully you can play around with properties and find some value from it. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I really appreciate the support, and good luck with your properties implementations. If you are interested in Logseq Mastery, I've added a link in the description below. So thanks so much for your support there too.